Shahin
Well,
Gobadi is a Paris-based National Council of Resistance of Iran member, which is the political arm of the MEK. Is that right, Shahin?
the National Council of Resistance of Iran is basically a political coalition which is against the Shah and against the clerical regime in Iran, trying to establish a democratic secular republic in Iran. And the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, also known as MEK, as you said, is the main member organization of the NCRI, which, as I said, is a political coalition.
The funerals have started in Iran, as you know now, for President Raisi and the foreign minister and others that were killed in the helicopter crash. Um, you see an orderly funeral procession taking place today. What is happening, do you think, away from that funeral procession? Are people really mourning the passing of this man?
Actually, quite to the contrary, people are celebrating because he was deeply, deeply hated by the Iranian regime. He was loathed by the Iranian regime for a very good reason. Actually, Raisi was known as the butcher of Tehran. And the reason was that throughout the past 45 years, since basically the inception of this despotic rule in Iran, Raisi played a key role in suppressing killing of Iranians, dissidents, and people from all over the country. He joined the regime when he was only 19, and the only thing that there was in his resume was killing, 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 and repression, repression, repression. That was his only achievement. He was a total obedient of the supreme leader, first Ruhollah Khomeini, then Ali Khamenei.
What happened in the
I said
1980s under
he was
in the 1980s under Raisi? How many people were killed?
well, actually, in 1988, to be exact, when Raisi was then the deputy prosecutor of Tehran, Khomeini issued an order basically saying any political prisoner, primarily the members and activists of the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, who remain steadfast and firm in their beliefs for democracy and human rights, should be immediately killed with no mercy. And to that effect, he set up death commissions throughout the country. And in Tehran, there were 4 people who were assigned to do this, and Ibrahim Raisi was one of them. In a matter of a few months, 30,000 political prisoners, men and women, were massacred after going through sham trials that last 1, 2, or 3 minutes. In Tehran alone, thousands of political prisoners were massacred, and Ibrahim Raisi played a very, very direct role to that effect. So, and that was one of his basically records.
And
And he didn't stop there. In
some of
2000,
the human rights groups who have written about that have said things like, when you say sham trials, people were asked one question or two questions and put to death by the state after that. And then most recently, um, he was really the captain of the ship when it came to the clampdown on the hijab, and the deaths of some of these women in custody. Is that right?
well, I was about to get to that. Actually, first about the 1988, as you said, there were only one question was asked: Why are you imprisoned? And if you say because I was affiliated to the MEK or the People's Mujahideen Organization in Iran, that was enough. No second question was asked, and you were immediately sent to the gallows. There are a few survivors, very few survivors, who have survived that process and they have basically explained to the world, have exposed how atrocious it was. It was, by all definition, by many, many, many prominent international human rights jurists, a crime against humanity. Probably one of the worst cases of the second part of the World War, second part of the 20th century, which unfortunately has gone very much unexposed. And the regime leaders who are all involved, including Raisi, have not been held accountable for their crimes against humanity. Now, more recent, for instance, in 2019, there was, as some might remember, a massive uprising by Iranians. People came to streets, all over the country, in 200 plus cities, asking for the overthrow of the regime. They were, protesting against the regime, barehanded, and 1,500 of them were massacred in a matter of a few days, and they were shot at directly by, live ammunition. And at that time, Ibrahim Raisi was head of the judiciary, and he directly played a big role in massacring these protesters. Many of them teenagers, obviously many of them women. So, as I said, his only achievement was killing, and that's why he was loathed by Iranian people from all age groups and all strata throughout the country. And as Madam Mariam Rajavi, the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, said yesterday, Raisi's legacy was basically the wrath of all these people who had lost their loved ones, their sons and daughters, in hands of this regime, particularly by Raisi.
So why was he put in charge as president? I mean, they talk about elections, but they were very controlled votes. The voter turnout was dismal. I mean, a lot of Iranians have even turned away from the so-called democratic process. Khamenei put him in, charge as president. Why? Because it was a transition, and he was seen as the guy who could do what?
Oh, I think this is the key issue for understanding what's going to happen next. And why, as Madam Rajavi said yesterday, we believe this was a monumental, irreparable strategic blow to the regime. You see, there have been 4 major nationwide uprisings since 2018 in Iran, one bigger than the other, 2018, 2019, and you saw the latest one in 2022, which went well into 2023, all getting bigger, more inclusive, more pervasive, and all demanding the regime's overthrow and establishment of a democratic secular republic, rejecting any form of dictatorship, being the current one or the former one by the Shah. So Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader who saw this momentum and realized how things are going, realized that the only way that he can, in his own calculation, forestall the overthrow of the regime is to circle the wagons, get rid of any kind of rift within the regime, make it totally unipolar, and bring the henchman or the killer at the helm of things. And the most suitable person for that mission was Ibrahim Raisi, given his record. So that's why he was propped up and handpicked and basically selected by Khamenei for this position. When it comes to Iran, I think it's a mockery and a joke to talk about elections. It has always been a farce. Anybody who wants to be even a candidate has to prove his or her loyalty to the supreme leader in actions and in belief. And they have to go through so many filters and watchdogs. And unless they have total, absolute loyalty, they are not going to be even put in the ballots. And for years, the regime played with this game. And in the last few years, it has become quite evident that this is only, as I said, a farce. And now it's become evident that overwhelming majority of the Iranians shun this gambit. And even the regime cannot pretend that the majority of Iranians take part in this.
So what can happen now? I mean, they're trying to have a smooth transition. They're going to have another election. What can potentially happen between, say, in the next 50 days, do you think?
Well, first of all, one has to realize what happened. As I said, loss of Ibrahim Raisi was a big blow to Khamenei and the strategy that he was pursuing. Because Khamenei needed to, as I said, intensify clamping down, but it does not limit it to inside Iran. He also needed to intensify the regime's foreign intervention and warmongering. And that's exactly what we saw in the last few years, particularly the last few months. As you know, the Iranian regime has been acting as the head of the snake so far as it pertains to terrorism and belligerence in the region. And who was the man who was the main implementer of Khamenei's objective? Ibrahim Raisi, who put all the resources and help and everything at the service of the regime's proxies in line and in tandem with the Revolutionary Guards. And also, so far as it pertains to the regime's involvement in the war between Russia and Ukraine by providing drones to Russia. So basically, as I said, Khamenei knew that in order to keep the regime in power, he has to rely on someone like Ibrahim Raisi as the implementer. Now, Ibrahim Raisi is gone. So it will be very difficult for Ali Khamenei to find someone like him. So basically, his strategy is not has received a major, major blow. Basically, everything to that effect has gone to a score one. He has to start from scratch, and that takes a lot of time and effort. And also, one has to remember, in order to bring about what happened, Khamenei had to get rid of a lot of even the regime's insiders and loyalists in favor of Raisi. The people who believed in him, but they were not as loyal as Raisi.
Because there are different factions in there, correct?
Exactly, factions and even the people who were not as absolute loyal that was needed for this position. Let's put it like this. So Khamenei has received a major blow. The faction, the feuding at the height of the regime will exacerbate because, as I said, people are vying, and they realize that supreme leader has become weaker, and so on and so forth. But also, so far as the society is concerned, that will create some kind of situation that, in the process, and I emphasize in the process, makes it easier for people to show their dissent. It's not by what Khamenei desires, but that's what the reality will happen. Now, so far as Khamenei is concerned, he has two choices: either to open up or to even further intensify execution, killing, meddling in the affairs of the region, and drive for nuclear weapons. And it's absolutely impossible for him to take the first, because the moment he opens up, it will only expedite and accelerate the regime's overthrow. And he will see a massive, massive uprising given the deep, profound grievances that exist in the society. So he has to intensify more on killings, belligerence, and drive for nuclear weapons. And that's what he will intend on. What will happen is in this situation, but the regime in totality will be much weaker. And as I said, the peoples will become much more active as we go along.
So you predict that they're going to try to tighten the stranglehold that they already have on people in Iran. But it seems to me you're saying all it needs is a spark, whatever that could be. There could be an incident near the funeral, weeks after the funeral, in the elections, and that may be enough to ignite the street and create real possible change in Iran.
Definitely. And you don't have to rely on my words on this. The Iranian state press, even before Raisi's death, is riddled about this talk. And basically, so far as the regime and Khamenei are concerned, this anxiety